Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me this evening as I work on a little bit larger canvas this time around. You know, I really enjoy big canvases, but unfortunately I don't have the space to store them. So whenever I know a juried exhibition is coming up at the installation where my gallery is located, I take advantage of that, and I always try to submit a larger piece with the hopes, of course, that I'll be selected and that it will ultimately sell. Your prep is going to be exactly the same for a large canvas. You're going to tape off the back edges, spray the back of the canvas with water to tighten it up, and for my bigger canvases, I always use these canvas levelers from acrylicpouringtools.com. They are so easy to use. I keep mine covered in sticky sealant wrap so I don't get paint on them. But all you have to do is screw them on, set your level on top of the canvas, and adjust the bottoms of the levelers until your canvas is perfectly level. Easy peasy. So let's talk about big canvases for a minute. Now, I know that this can be intimidating for some. I see so many posts on Facebook from people that are just scared to try pouring on something larger. But in the grand scheme of things, the only things that are really different are that you'll need a little more space to work in and you'll need a little more paint. That's it. The fundamentals that you've learned about pouring all still apply. You decide what technique you want to do. You pick your palette, mix up your paint, pour it and tilt it just like any other piece that you've done. Now, I will highly recommend that you be extremely comfortable with whatever technique you choose, because one, scraping something of this size, as you can imagine, is no fun. So know your technique well enough that two, if you need to make some adjustments or fixes after you've poured, you're going to be comfortable doing that without any panic setting in. Now, I'm going to be doing what's called a shadow pour on this one. This is a technique that Michelle Galley with Grateful Creations has been doing for quite some time with satin enamel and COLOURARTE primary elements. And I chose this technique because the paint is very thin like milk, and because the shadow pour is a great way to create a soft and subtle background for something else going on the canvas, which is exactly what I needed for this piece. The first thing I'm gonna do is put down my pearl base coat, and instead of just tilting it around because of the size of the canvas, I'm gonna spread it out with a spatula first. I want to ensure that the canvas is well covered before I start losing that paint when it's tilted off. The process for this technique is pretty simple. After you lay down your base coat and tilt it off, you put down your pigments, tilt them around to cover the canvas, then you lay more base coat on top of your pigments and tilt them all out. Once that's done, you're going to take your blow dryer and blow the paint around, which will combine the pigments with the satin enamel, and they'll begin to look shadowy as they show through. The result is ultimately a very soft and subtle look, but one that you can make more dramatic by adding more pigment in specific areas if that's what you're going for. But like I said before, my goal here was to create a colorful but muted background for the next phase of this piece. Now, as I'm looking at my composition here, I really wanted that lighter center, the yellow and orange colors. I wanted those to be more central to the piece. So I am going to tilt the paint over just a little bit and expand it just a bit to make that center area a little lighter. And like I said, I want the eyes drawn more to that center as opposed to anywhere else. So I'm going to be adding some clay to this piece, and I really like using this Fimo brand. It's a clay that you have to bake, but it's really easy and simple to use, very versatile, and these are the tools that I'll be using. Okay, so these are just a few of the clay tiles that I baked, and they turned out great. Got several different sizes. They turned out really cool. So I am now just going to brush paint them. And I'm using, this is a medium color of the ivory that I'm using. I'm actually using 3 different colors of ivory. One is going to be a darker, this is the medium, and then one is really, really light. Now, you may ask, because I certainly asked myself, why don't you just spray paint these? And you know what? You can. You can definitely do that. I'm just doing them in 3 different colors, so I wasn't sure if I would be able to get 3 shades all in the same family. And I wouldn't be able to say that, hey, each piece was hand done. I like being able to say that. So I think it's just a personal preference. If I could be assured that I could get 3 different shades, but they would all be the same family of color, I might go for it, I don't know. But it doesn't take me very long at all. I'm certainly not going to make you watch me as I paint all these. I'll paint one and then put it on a piece of wax paper, go on to the next one, and I'll put on some music for you guys, and we'll move on to the next stage, which will be after the paint, I will add a glaze, and this is it. It's really, really pretty. It's called French Vanilla, and I know it looks yellow, and it does give a yellow hue once you put it on, but you have to remember, this is it. It's a Primary Elements, and it is called French Vanilla. Once you put it on, you have to remember these are very transparent. Pigments are just transparent. It's just a fact of life. But it is gonna give a nice little sheen, as well as a hint of that yellowy hue, which is kind of what I'm looking for in my clay. So anyway, that's it. I'm using this kind of brush. It's really, really fine bristled. It doesn't leave a whole lot of lines. If it does, I can just like barely go over it and get rid of any lines. But it has this shape, which I like because it helps me get into these indentions right here, the way that it's shaped. So I can just kind of go around it like that, and I'm done with that part of it. But anywho, that is the plan. So like I said, I just kind of go around the edges. Make sure there's nothing gooped up. Once I've got that, I'm gonna go ahead and do the center. I'm trying to do this where y'all can see it, so it's kind of hard for me to see too. I'm having to look over here. And this clay paints so nicely. It's just so soft and smooth. When you first take it out of the oven, it's so velvety. I just love this stuff. Okay, so I got a few lines. Just kind of go over them in an opposite direction. And it's really not that big of a deal if you have a few lines, just as long as they're not, you know, deep and prominent. So that's the inside. And then I just kind of take my brush and go back over the top here, because when this dries, I'll turn it over and just do enough of the side that will be showing once I put it on the canvas. These lay pretty flat, but you're still gonna see some of the bottom of it. So you wanna make sure you paint that part too. So I'm going around the edge, and then I just kind of smooth it out. You may have to go back and smooth the inside of that lip, since you were going around it with the brush. And just like that, we're done. Super easy, super fast. Doesn't have to be, you know, exactly perfect. It helps to use an opaque color when you're painting your clay. Otherwise, you're gonna have to go over it again if you're using a transparent or a semi-transparent paint. But I'm using pretty opaque, so I don't have to worry about it. And it dries really super fast because you saw how thin the layer of paint was that I put on there. So I'm gonna throw that over there, and I'm gonna put on some music, which probably we won't even listen to because I'm just gonna jump to the next phase here when I get done with this. So I'll see you then. Okay, we are moving on to the next phase, and that is putting the glaze on. Now, if your pigments have been mixed for a little bit and they've been sitting, you want to make sure that you stir them up. You see how that went from yellow to that pearlescent look? That's because the pigment, the particulates in here will settle, and they'll settle at the bottom. And that's really like the good part of the pigments is the bling part. So just give it a good stir. And I forgot my torch. I'll be right back. Okay, now the reason you need a torch is because this mixture is so thin. It's just on your varnish and the pigment. So when you brush it on, it's gonna cause a little bit of friction and you will get some air bubbles. You definitely don't want those to be drying in your clay because it will show up. So that's why I'm gonna give it a light torch when I'm done here. So I'm just gonna dip my brush in there. I'm gonna kind of get some of it off. You don't wanna leave a whole lot. And I'm just gonna give it a nice little glaze. I'm gonna go around the edge. You don't wanna go too thick around the edge. You wanna kind of make sure you brush it back down, otherwise gravity is gonna pull it down anyway, and it'll pool. Which in some of those areas it's okay because as it pools, it obviously, there's more liquid there, so you're gonna see that yellow tinge a little bit more, which is actually very cool. And I'm just gonna go around the edges here. Not with too much, otherwise it'll run down the sides, and I don't necessarily want that. But just so there's a little bit of shine on the top. And then I'm gonna give it a really quick torch. And boom, all those bubbles are gone. It's pretty glossy. That's what you want. You may want to do 2 coats. I think on my last piece, I did 2 coats of the glaze. So anyway, that's what it looks like. It's so pretty. I love it. In the light, you can see a bunch of sparkle, but you can also see, I don't know how well you can see it. You can also see that little yellow hue, which is super cool. It just makes the whole piece look more ivory to me, because this is the darkest color of ivory that I used, and it's kind of like a light beige, but like I said, I wanted it more ivory, and this glaze really does a great job. So there you have it. I'll be back here in just a little bit with the next phase. Okay guys, so I have varnished the piece. I varnished it with Liquitex satin finish, and I have saved you from the tedious process of trying to figure out how to place these things. I went through several different patterns, but this is what I came up with, and I love it. This piece can be hung either horizontal or vertical, and I think it would look okay. But that is where things are at this point. So our next phase is going to be to adhere these to the canvas. So let me get the camera set up and I will be right back. All right, so this is what I use to adhere my clay. It's E6000. You can get it anywhere, hardware stores, Walmart, Amazon, wherever. It is the best that I have found for being a really, really strong hold. And you're not getting one of those clay pieces off unless you physically rip it off. So that's why I use this stuff. So I'm going to put you on time lapse and let's get these things glued down.